Hi and welcome to English with Stuart. Today we're going to have a look at false friends. Falsos amigos. Between English and Spanish. Now there are plenty of words in both languages that look very similar. And that's because they both have very similar origins. They both come from Latin originally. But along the development of both languages, they've diverted slightly and now have different meanings. Some by a little stretch of the imagination and others by a much bigger, wider gap. So we're going to have a look at some today, and we'll start with Libreria in Spanish. How do we say Libreria in English? Well, of course it's very tempting to say library, but whilst there is a connection, and the connection of course is books, they're not exactly the same. Libreria in English is bookshop. In British English, bookstore in American English. Whereas library is in fact the Spanish biblioteca. So these often get confused. The next one is quite funny sometimes. Again, you've got to be very careful here. And that is with the word constipado. Whether it be the noun or the adjective, in English, the adjective for constipado is congested. My nose is congested. I have a cold. My nose is congested. Well, you could use congestionado in Spanish, but no, constipado. The problem is, in English, constipated means something very different. Estreñido. No hace caca. So the problem here is if you're in an English-speaking country and you go to a pharmacy and you tell them that you are constipated when you mean congested, they're going to give you laxatives, which is not going to help your condition very much at all. Another interesting one is conservante in Spanish. We're talking about food. Conservante in English is preservative. The preservatives in food to keep the food from going bad. You can see where I'm going with this, can't you? The problem is that preservativo is not the same thing. In English, of course, preservativo is condom. And that's in British English and in American English. But in American English, they often use the word rubber, which is a false friend between British English and American English. We have false friends in English between different English-speaking countries. Rubber, of course, is goma de borrar in Inglés Británico, in British English, but in America, rubber is preservativo. So if a British person says to an American, "Can I borrow your rubber, please?" the American is going to look, What? What are you asking? Yeah. So you need to be very careful with your use of those particular false friends. The next one on the list I have today is lectura. Lectura. How do you say that in English? Well, reading. A reading. We're having a reading this afternoon in class, for example. But then in English we have the word lecture. What does lecture mean? Well, typically lecture is used as la conferencia de la universidad. So normally it's at university and you have a university lecture, but you can often say to your parents perhaps, "Come on, stop giving me a lecture." It's like sermon. Except sermon in English is strictly used just for religious reasons in church. Lecture is like a sermon delivered by someone who is telling you certain things, like your parents. "No, don't do that for this reason. Stop giving me a lecture." The next one is the Spanish verb realizar. Now in English this is very interesting because in English you could theoretically use to realize, but it's not commonly used and it's very formal. And the reason why it's not commonly used is because it will confuse the other meaning, the more common meaning of to realize, which of course to realize in Spanish, the English version to realize is darse cuenta. But realizar is often used with a phrasal verb. And the phrasal verb is to carry out. So I hope you enjoyed part 1 of False Friends. Look out for part 2. I'll put the link in the chat below for some more false friends that will help you improve your English so that you can communicate better without confusing yourself and native speakers by using the wrong false friend. Please click like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you very, very soon.